Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today is a very special guest, former WWE World Tag Team Champion, European Champion, Hardcore Champion, a Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champion. He's now running OVW. He is Mr. Al Snow. Al, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it.
So what's going on in your world? What have you been up to?
Being a part owner and operating OVW seems it keeps my hands full pretty much a lot. That thing's a monster. So I my hats off to Vince McMahon. It's amazing what he does on a daily basis on that level because I can barely keep up with everything on this level. So I can only imagine what he's doing, on that level. It's got to be insane.
Oh, it's absolutely nuts of the licensing, merchandising, TV, and everything else. But what's going on with OVW? Like, what's the latest? How's everything going with you guys in TV and moving forward?
With TV, it's going great. We just signed a deal and got on the Action Channel, which increases our reach nationally across the country. And we're trying to work on a couple of other outlets right now, national outlets, to get the show on regionally. We've always been for decades. We've been, on WBNA here in Louisville, Kentucky, and now we're in Lexington and Bowling Green and Hazard, and they are a part of the great television network. So, if things go well, which they've been going very well there, the hope is that we'll expand out into Charleston, West Virginia, which is a gray station that broadcasts all of West Virginia and northeastern Kentucky, and then we can access Cincinnati, Dayton, Indianapolis, and Evansville, Indiana, and that'll give us about a 2.5 hour range within from Louisville that we can operate live events once we establish the television show in those different areas.
I think everyone thinks OVW. They automatically think like the WWE developmental territory going back many years. What is like? What would you say right now? Like, how would you describe OVW? Obviously, not a developmental territory at all
In a way,
anymore.
it is to a degree. What I've tried to build here is a combination of two things. One, an operational territory, regardless of whether it's developmental or otherwise, it's an operational territory, and um, a platform that allows for exposure and for talent to promote themselves and make themselves into stars and give them opportunities. And it's a place, a developmental in the sense that we operate the only actual wrestling school that is certified as a trade school by the State Office of Proprietary Education in the world. And so it's a great place for young talent to come and learn and be developed and get experience and therefore know the tools that they need to take advantage of opportunities that come their way. And then I'm steadily working on it becoming a. Sorry about that.
Oh, no
Sorry,
problem.
somebody called. Sorry. I'm working very hard on making it a viable platform for veteran wrestlers that have had a run in another, platform, another company, to be able to come and reinvent themselves and get exposure on the platform and possibly, use that to create another opportunity to work on a larger platform again. So, and to be able to make a living uh, strictly as a professional wrestler, that's the goal, is to be able to make this a financially profitable and successful model that talent can come and make a living. Now, they're not going to get rich, because it's not that size of a platform. But they could make a living and being a wrestler and nothing else, not having to have another type of job.
How'd you get the trade school thing? Like, how did that come about? Because that's interesting.
Took many years. Took about 2 years of work to make it happen. And you know, the explanation was twofold. One, I think everybody views professional wrestling training as like you would be taking martial arts like jujitsu or, and to a degree it is. I mean, but the difference is that in martial arts they're just teaching you self-defense, and in professional wrestling training I am teaching these young men and women skills to pursue a career, to make a living, to have a vocation, and that's the big difference. They have to know certain things to be able to take advantage of opportunities that come their way to be, financially successful, and so that's where it becomes a different situation than just an average athletic endeavor, an athletic pursuit. The other reason is that we've incorporated other classes into the school other than just wrestling training. So we teach, lighting and sound and camera operation and editing and producing and
You're back.
we're back. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no
Um,
problem.
but we offer classes on lighting, sound, camera operation, editing, live event management, etc. Teaching skills not only in the ring but outside the ring for it's twofold. One, as an in-ring performer now, if you've operated a camera, you've shot the television show, then you know what to look for. As far as a performer, you know what that the camera is looking for and what you need to do to be able to capitalize on that television time that you're on the air and use it as effectively as possible. As an out of the ring performer, you now have skills that give you value well and beyond what you can just do in the ring, because it's not a matter of if your career is at some point going to come to an end, and as far as being able to perform in the ring, it's a matter of when it's going to come to an end. And if you have additional skills besides just what you can do in the ring, you can still be an asset to a wrestling company in a major operation.
Because it's right, it's wrestling, but it's TV production, it's lighting. I mean, it's so much more than just pro wrestling. I mean, it's TV, times 10.
Oh yeah, producing a live television wrestling show is a completely different world. You're going to need skills, and you're going to learn skills that you can't learn in any other area of broadcasting or entertainment.
Where do you amass all your knowledge from? Because I always talk to Ben Hameen. He says like you're one of the smartest guys in wrestling. I talk to Dr. Tom all the time. He always says like what a genius for wrestling, was always a hidden talent all the way back in the day, but like vast knowledge. Where do you accumulate all your knowledge? Because you're passing it along to the next generation. But older guys like Dr. Tom putting you over, younger guys like Ben putting you over.
Well, I'm very flattered that anybody's put me over. And I'm not saying that I do know anything, because I don't know. I don't think that I necessarily do. I just think I do a really good job of making people believe that I do, and then I just make up as I go along. So,
Where did you kind of amass all the knowledge? It's just from learning through the years from different guys. Did you have like a mentor like through the business when you were coming along?
I've been doing it for 39 years, and I've had a lot of. I think I've had a lot of experience, and I've had a lot of varied experience, and um, you know, I think I was very lucky. The guy that Jim Lancaster, the guy that broke me in the business, and at that time, when you were broke in the business, it was more like an apprenticeship, because you spent, the guy was responsible for you, and held accountable on how good you were. And we spent a lot of time traveling together back in the day in the cars, and that was where you really learned, was in a car. And I got to spend a lot of time with a lot of guys that had been in this business doing it for a living. Not doing it on the weekends, but just doing it for a living, nothing else. This was the way they fed their families, the way they paid their bills. I was spent a lot of time with those types of people, and learned from them, and learned from the guy who trained me. And one of the things that we used to do a lot, which really seemed to help me, and still does, is that to stay awake, we would book a territory, all the way through. If we didn't get it done in that car ride, then we, had to, we picked that back up when we were on the next trip. But you were able to pick whatever talent you wanted from whatever territories, and then you had to justify or explain who they were, why you picked them, who were your heels, who were your baby faces, who were your top heels and your top baby faces. What were you going to work to? What was going to be the blow-off match that was going to pop the territory, and lay it out from show to show and week to week and month to month, and and how you were going to build it and where you were going to get your heat and what was going to create that heat that was going to drive people to want to see the final match. And at the time, it was just an exercise that I did with him just to stay awake in the car. And when I was head of developmental for WWE for down here in OVW, I kind of just got thrust in the role of writing the TV show, booking the TV show week to week, and then also the live events that we did at that time. Which at that time, the last year when WWE was associated with WWE, we ran 186 live events that year alone.
Wow.
With an average attendance of about 400 people, which 400 is not a lot, but when you realize that's an opportunity for young talent to work in front of an audience of that many people on an average basis of 186 times throughout the year, it's pretty significant. And so, I got thrust to kind of totally by accident into the position of writing TV, and I was able to just pretty much do it. I mean, and I think a large part of the reason I was able to do it and have an understanding of it was because of those hours in the car, breaking things down and, figuring things out. So.
Have you been with OVW all the way straight through from the WWE time till basically now, or was there a break in between?
There were several breaks. When WWE left, I left because, Danny didn't have any way to, pay me or anything, and I had to go out and work go out and wrestle. And then I came back when I was an executive for TNA. Between Bruce Pritchard and I, we kind of created the developmental program for Impact Wrestling. And, of course, its Impact was just 2 hours down the road from that, in Nashville from Louisville. It was natural to create that relationship with Danny again and Danny Davis and OVW. And, we had the Impact developmental go for several years here until budget considerations they had to eliminate it. And then I left again, and then I returned about 3 years ago, I think, just hanging out. And then one thing led to another, and I decided to rib myself and buy a wrestling company. So,
How's that working out for you? Seems pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm not gonna lie, I love it, and I really enjoy working with everybody, all the talent. It frustrates me sometimes, because I sometimes feel like I want them to succeed more than they do themselves. But we've gotten to do some really cool things and build some really cool stuff, and we don't really get much recognition out in the wrestling world for what we're doing. But that's not keeping us from doing it, and I don't mind that. I like working quietly off to the side and until it gets to a point where they can't ignore us anymore.
With that, I feel like OVW, it's still relevant and everyone it's still paying attention to it. Do you think that expanding it even further? I know you were saying Charleston instead. Do you think that that's viable to do? Like, let's say Ring of Honor might be gone, and do you think that there's like a room for another promotion out there, or is there so much out there you don't want to expand too much too fast?
Well, I'm not gonna expand beyond just the regional area that we're in. We don't have the infrastructure nor the roster,
Okay.
or the resources to run nationally. I mean, everybody, that's the big, I guess everybody wants to do is they want to operate on a national level. And even, listen, even WWE has considered for years eliminating their live events on a national level because they are too costly. Um, you know, for us though, um, running regionally and within a 2.5 hour, geographic distance of Louisville, Kentucky, it's very viable. We have TV in those areas. We can run live events and we can make them profitable, drawing an audience that works again to not only support the company but also gives talent valuable experience in front of that live audience that they would never receive anywhere else. That's the whole main reason, the motivation why I've made the move to produce our television show live every Thursday night, was because outside of WWE and AEW, there's nowhere else that you can work on a live television show. And it is a remarkable difference between doing a post-produced show and a live television show. They're remarkably different for the talent, and you want to be as prepared as possible if you get an opportunity, let's say, to go AEW or WWE, and because now that's the last place you want that to be your first experience on a live television platform, is when you're walking out there with that life-changing opportunity. Sorry about that.
Hey, no problem.
Um, so the last place you want to be, with your first experience of being on live television with a life-changing opportunity, is AEW or WWE, where you've never been on live television and now you're thrust out there, and it's a sink or swim situation. And you're not going to know the skills to really capitalize on and take advantage of that opportunity to its fullest advantage. And as a result, you're only going to get that opportunity once. You're not going to get multiple takes at that opportunity. So by operating, training and performing in a platform like what we have here, it allows you to now get that experience, that understanding, and that knowledge, so that when you go and that you get that opportunity on that live television show, you're going to be able to exploit that to its fullest.
So with you lately, I noticed you come into the Vince Russo brand, and you're going to be doing a show with Vince. How did that all come about? I guess it's Lions, Tigers, Bears, and Head.
Is that what he titled it?
Yes.
Um, well, I've always been a friend of Vince's. Vince's been a friend of mine, and worked with him in WWE, worked with him in Impact. He's a great guy. He's a controversial guy, but he's a good guy. And he contacted me and told me that Disco Inferno was taking a sabbatical from the show, and wanted to see if I would be interested in doing so. I probably have a little bit of a different take than most people in regards to how I'm going to view things, and I'm not really one for critiquing other people's operations. When speaking about it, I will offer my opinion, but I will make it known that it's an opinion, because if I'm not directly involved or I've not been directly contacted by anybody, then it's all it is just assumption and speculation, and I'm not going to try to present it as if it's actual fact. You know what I mean? I just, it isn't going to be the way that I try to operate, um, and because I can't judge people if I don't know the full circumstances of what's going on and what the behind the scenes considerations are. But I'll try to give insight and maybe a different opinion than what normally most people hear, and see how it works. See if people are entertained by it.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Very interested. He said you were his first choice to replace the Great Disco Inferno there, so that's a good thing.
Well, I'm very flattered that I was anybody's choice, let alone first choice.
When did you first meet him? Would it be the WWF, or was it like in the when he first started with the magazine, or was it later on when he was writing the Attitude Era?
He was with the magazine when I met him, when I first came to WWF. Yeah, I would meet him at TV, see him there, and meet him there.
So what's the relationship like been throughout the years? You said you always got along with him very well.
Sure, yeah. I don't always agree with Vince. Vince doesn't always agree with me, and that's fine. He has his way of doing things. He has his strengths and his weaknesses, and I'm sure I do as well. And I have my views and my opinions as far as the way things should be done. And but Vince is he's a very creative guy. And I think that the record will show that Vince Russo working with Vince McMahon, the pair of them were able to, and a large part of it too were the talent, but the creativity of Vince Russo, coupled with the direction by Vince McMahon, led to a great boom in the wrestling business with the Attitude Era. With the ideas and the creativity and things that they came up with each week to entertain the fans. I mean, that's not an easy job. Having that responsibility, keeping that machine running, and keeping and motivating an audience to continually tune in, because we're competing for the most valuable resource on the planet, and that's your attention. And that's not easy to get, and it's even harder to keep. And then the ultimate objective behind it, getting your attention, is to ultimately motivate you to want to leave the comfort, safety, and security of your home, get in your car, drive to a building, pay to park, which is absurd, and then pay a large amount of money to get into that building, to sit in seats you don't want to sit in, around people you don't want to sit around, to pay for food you don't want to eat, to watch some guy do his job. That's ultimately what it is. I know that everybody wants to believe that professional wrestling is only about having the critical acclaim of a wrestling match, but that wrestling match isn't for critical acclaim. That wrestling match is to motivate people to leave their homes and drive to a building and watch the show. And if that part of the equation doesn't happen, you don't stay in business. Simple as that.
Man, especially as a fan back then, we were willing to do that over and over again during the Attitude Era. I mean, I remember just like random house shows. They'd be like, "Oh, Steve Austin on the show. Oh, driving to Philly," or "Hey, driving to East Rutherford, or Austin's on the card," or whatever. Like, what was it like to be a part of that? Because it was so hot. I mean, the crowds were so good.
That was great. It was awesome. It was, there's nothing better than when a territory, and ultimately at the end of the day, WWE is a territory still. WWE is no different than what it was, Memphis was. It's just WWE runs on a national level and an international level. There's nothing better than when a territory's hot and it's making money. Nothing better. It's so awesome. One, because you're making money. I mean, that's always a positive. But two, the crowds are hotter. They're into everything you're doing, and it's a great run. It's an awesome run to be a part of.
What do you think is missing from today's wrestling that I know it's a completely different time period, but back then it seemed like Austin's larger than life, Rock's larger than life. Do you think that plays a part into like what we're missing? Those like real guys. You're like, man, these guys are like superheroes. They're a hero to me. I love Austin. Undertaker. Are we missing some of that part of wrestling?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are unquestionably. That the two most important things, and regardless of time frame, nothing. The wrestling business has not changed. It hasn't. I swear to you. The only thing about the wrestling business has changed is that the level of sophistication of the audience that's watching. The audiences are much more sophisticated than they were even just 10 years ago. It's a different world. 10 years, 10 years hence, it'll be a different world than what it is today. And that audience will be even more sophisticated. But one thing that doesn't change is of what you're selling intrinsically about wrestling. I don't care how you go about doing it. But at the end of the day, the only thing that quote unquote is fake, that's not real, is that we know who's going to win. And then the only thing let's be honest, the only thing you are really buying a ticket that really drives your interest in wrestling is who the performer is as a person, as a character, as a persona, and why are they doing it? Why are they out in that ring? Well, they're out in that ring to try to win and not lose. The backstage things and the storylines and all that just adds gravity or consequence to that win or loss. That's all it does. That's never changed. That was the way it was in 1901. It's the way it was in 1961. It's the way it is in 2021. That never changes. Does the wrestling business evolve, grow, develop? Yes, but what you're selling doesn't. I mean, I don't know if you watch boxing or if you watch MMA, but if you do, let's be honest, there's only two reasons you ever watch either one of those sports. It's because of who's fighting and why. Well, guess what? Wrestling's exactly the same. It doesn't change. The reason the Attitude Era was so ultra successful was because every guy on the show was somebody you could describe to your friends and family in a sentence. Let's be honest. You could say, you could describe Steve Austin as a beer drinking, ass kicking redneck that flips off his boss and fights authority. Boom, we know who he is. Undertaker, that guy. Gold Dust, sexually weird, and you know, sexually ambiguous. We know these people. That's why we relate to them, and we relate to why they're doing it. Yeah, baseball. I've used this analogy a number of times on other interviews. Baseball, football, and basketball have enormous audiences in the United States. The reason they do is because everybody's played them in the United States. That's why hockey has a bigger audience in Canada than it does in the United States. That's why soccer is bigger all over the rest of the world than it is here in the United States. That's why soccer is becoming bigger here. It's because we have more generations of children that are playing it. The top three, and everybody's always surprised when I list this off, the top three in the world, the rest of the world, not just the United States, but in the rest of the world, the top three televised sporting events are as follows. Number three is the World Cup of Rugby. Rugby. Number two is the World Cup of Cricket. Number one is soccer, the World Cup of Soccer. Notice, I did not mention the World Series. I did not mention the Super Bowl because they are not even close to the numbers that those other three sporting events draw. And the reason that they draw that is because people play those in those other countries. The whole point of this is just like, golf, more old white people, white guys watch golf than anybody else. Why? More old white guys play golf than anybody else. If you've never been inside a ring, you don't know what or how to relate to what's happening physically. All you can relate to is the consequence of what's taken place, which is that somebody can win and somebody lose. And unfortunately these days, the talent in all organizations are focusing on selling you what they do. No longer are they selling who they are and why they're doing it during the match. Not, not talking about vignettes and promos. And, those are all well and good. But the problem with those are that if you sell me that you're A, B, C, D, E on a promo backstage in a vignette, you sell me effectively that you're this character, then the bell rings and you don't wrestle like that guy, well, now we're done. Because you sold me a product. I bought the product. I cared about the product. And now I get another product. I don't get the thing that I bought. Well, now I'm not going to pay to see it anymore. Simple as that.
That's so true. Like about the attitude era, you can explain the guy in a sentence. Nowadays, it is harder to explain. Some guys, you'd be like, "Well, what is this guy?" Or not a guy in particular, but a lot of the guys like, "Oh yeah, how would you describe him to somebody that's like a casual fan?" Like, "Hey,
Can you
crazy
turn to your
schizophrenic."
friends and family? Can you turn to your friends and family and go, "Hey, there's this guy and he's A, B, C, D, E." All of those guys, the majority of those guys on the Attitude Era back then, you could. Let's be honest, you could. Vince McMahon was the evil boss. Steve Austin was the regular Joe that stood up to him. Rock was the movie star guy even before he was a movie star. Undertaker was that guy. You can until I got that definable persona, that definable personality that clicked with an audience. I was I was the best kept secret in wrestling, and
Yeah.
and then I became the guy that was crazy and talked to a head, but you knew who I was and you knew what I was about, and you could in one sentence you could turn to your friends and go, "There's a crazy guy, never knew what he's gonna do. He talks to a head, treats it like it's a real person. Man, you got to watch."
Hey, no problem at all. But you were
Um,
saying like just about the characters in general. It's crazy how you can describe them.
it indeed, that is essential if you really want to be a star in professional wrestling, is that you've got to develop and create that, not a character but a persona. That's who you really are, your real personality, but just that aspect turned way up so that an audience will believe in you, because that's the key. It's not to make people believe in what you're physically doing, because you're never going to be able to. It's the key is to make them believe in who you are and why you're doing it, and then they'll believe in anything you do, physically or otherwise. I mean, look at, people genuinely say what you want, but people genuinely believe that I was clinically insane. And, they believe that I knocked somebody out with a plastic head. And I can't. It's not physically possible. I can't even knock a toddler out. I've tried. The kids usually just go down and start crying, and then their parents start saying stuff about calling the police and other stuff. And it's like, hey, your kid won't sell and put me over, so he's the one that's the problem. Um, so if you're gonna call the cops, call the wrestling cops, because this guy's he's not selling the gimmick at all, but he's
Right.
down there on the floor crying. So Tommy Rich got color for it. He bled. This kid won't put me over at all. But I can make people believe still to this day that I can knock somebody out with it, because they believed in who I was and why I was doing it.
Definitely. Where did that come from? Like that, just the thought process of creating this awesome gimmick. Like you're the best kept secret. Everyone knows you're a great worker, but how could you create that character? So how do you create the head and the character and like that schizophrenic nature of it?
Just taking what I knew an audience already knew about me. I knew that if you watched WWE, that you saw me as Leif Cassie, and if anybody was that happy-go-lucky, they had to have some kind of mental illness. And I knew that there were a lot of ECW fans that knew me well before, and if they knew I had been pursuing anything as long as I'd been pursuing it, and was not, as far as I was concerned at that time, was not achieving some kind of success, that frustration would eventually play out, and I'd have a nervous breakdown. And so I tried different things that would help to demonstrate that I'd done just exactly that, that the frustration had finally gotten to me and I'd snapped, that I had a nervous breakdown.
Where'd you get the idea from?
I read a book on abnormal psychology, and trying different things, and saw a woman in there had a case study about parent schizophrenia with transference disorder, and where she transferred what she thought, the voices that she heard from a lamp or a couch or whatever, she thought they were crazy, not her. So that's how I always treated the head, was that they were crazy, not me.
So with obviously, I mean, the gimmick is awesome. So the head itself, where do you get the head from, like the actual physical head? Like you just took it off a mannequin, or like where did like that actual part come into play?
Initially, I found a styrofoam head because in the old ECW arena, there was a part of it that was used to make the Lumber Day parade floats in Philadelphia, and um, they had a styrofoam head back there, and I picked it up, and I thought, well, I'm just going to carry this ring, and I'm going to talk to it and treat it as if it's real and alive, and I started getting. I knew I had to get one with a face, and I had got these ones that have a thin plastic face on them. They get broken, and Mikey Whipwreck and Spike Dudley found in a barrel in New Britain, Connecticut. The fans used to bring objects for New Jack to use as weapons in his match, and they went through the barrel one night in New Britain, Connecticut, and they found found the head and Beautician's head, and came running up to me and were like, "Here you go, Al. I know you would need something like this." I was like, "That's perfect, thank you." And they've been with me ever since. So.
Were you ever shocked of like how over it got? I mean, it was just like, man, the crowd, especially
Sure.
the ECW crowd. I mean, they really took to it.
Yeah, I really, really was surprised. I was thrilled. You know what I mean? And I was really surprised that you know um, it got, because you don't know what's going to work or what's not going to work. You just do, and and it did. And I think the reason it did was because, like, at the time I was wrongfully, I had a bad attitude and I had a lot of personal frustration about my career, and was pointing the finger at everybody else instead of pointing where it belonged, which is at myself, and taking responsibility for my successes and my failures 100% on my own. Um, and that came through whenever I would speak to the head. That frustration came through, and so it was real, and so that made who I was real, and they believed in me, and so as a result, that's why I got over. Why it worked.
And even in ECW, the Prodigy song "Breathe," it just everything was perfect. The way just the music went, and then they handed out the styrofoam head, and sometimes the lights they'd mess with the lights. It was just in the camera work too. I mean, everything was perfect, frantic craziness, but it fit the character perfectly.
Yeah, it did. It was a perfect storm. It worked really, really, really well. I was very, very fortunate that it ended up working the way it did.
And I know you had a very good program with Shane Douglas, the franchise on there too. I feel like he has said that he was a little injured in one of the matches. You kind of carried him, but he's a buddy of mine, so I'm allowed to say that.
Well, Shane's awesome, and I think Shane's very underrated. I don't think he gets the credit that he deserved. And Shane's a throwback too. Shane broke in around the same time I did back in '82, and was in the different territories coming up, and so he understands things on a different level than a lot of people realize.
And Shane's training buddy with Dominic DeNucci was your buddy Mick Foley. What's up with him and always the digs at you and like the little stories and the little joke? Why does Foley always do that?
That I don't know. I think he sometimes I wonder because it borders on obsession, and to the point to where it's almost like a sexual proclivity to it, and it worries me. But I don't mind. I mean, I think it's awesome that he continues to keep mentioning me, keeps my name alive. You know what I mean? He keeps bringing attention to me and putting me over. So why not? Feel free.
I did a show with him last week. I was just like a producer on it, but he was on the show. But fans kept asking him questions like about you or say a joke about you, but he wasn't taking the bait. I was shocked. I was like, "Whoa, did he turn a new leaf here?" He
I
wasn't. He
don't know.
wasn't
Yeah,
burying you.
it's a And to bury, you guys need to understand. You all use terms you don't know what they are.
Right.
To
The wrong
bury
word,
someone,
joke about
yeah,
it,
to bury someone is not to say something negative, and everybody thinks it is. When you are speaking about somebody, whether you're speaking positively or negatively, you're not burying them. You're putting that person over because you're paying attention to them. And if you want to bury somebody, the real term is just what it says. When somebody dies, you put them in the earth, you bury them, and pretty soon you don't talk about them ever again, and they're forgotten. That's burying somebody, you know. And
not bury. He
there's a
jokes
big
about
difference.
Jokes around about you.
He jokes about me and makes remarks about me, and he's ultimately putting me over. So I don't mind. I mean, let him keep doing it. I mean, he's done it for years. He'll never stop. So.
What was like the genesis of that though? Was there like a starting point where he was like, I'm just
Yeah,
gonna.
it started when we get bored in the car and we do what we called like a verbal boxing match, and then we would we'd throw verbal jabs back and forth, and then we'd, oh my god, like if you hit each other with a good one, oh, that's a standing 8. Oh my god, I knocked you out on that one. You know what I mean? You didn't even have a chance to put your hands up on that one. And we would joke back and forth, and the rule was we were going to keep it in the car. But then Mick started doing it in the locker room, and then started doing it in front of the boys. They got him a good reaction, so he kept doing it. And then, then he started doing it on TV, and then in the infancy of the internet, he was doing it there, and then he just kept doing it. Wrote his book and just kept doing it there, and been doing it ever since. So
it basically started out like as a little bit of an inside joke, and then he just.
just as a little competition between the two of us, and we agreed. We're like, we'll just keep it in the car. We're not going to give. This is such a competitive business. We're not going to give the people in the locker room an upper hand, to bury, throw us under the bus, so to speak. So, so it was agreed we wouldn't do it, but then he took it outside of the car and started doing it in the locker room and everywhere else. And I kept up and was doing very well, but I just got to a point where um, sometimes Mick could dish it out. He couldn't really take it, so he'd get upset. So I told him, I said, "Well, I'm not going to play anymore. I'm just not gonna do it anymore." And I stopped, and he kept going. So
Because even when he does some of his live shows, I know I saw one on WWE Network. He's like sneaks in a little Al Snow joke. I was like, man, he's still going. I can't believe that.
yeah, he's still at it. Yeah, still throws them in there.
What is it like traveling with him? But to me, it seems like he's like a jovial guy. But you always see, obviously the character, Mankind and Cactus Jack. Like, so is there like a crazy side to him, or is he the Santa Claus that he?
Traveling. We traveled together for a long time. But eventually, it just is. It's human nature. Eventually, you start to get on each other's nerves, because when you're, little things that that didn't bother you before really start to bother you as you guys are traveling together, because you're in the car all the time, you're at the building all the time, you're eating together, you're sleeping in the same hotel. I mean, and eventually just that. Sorry about that. Another phone call.
Yeah.
Just the littlest things start to become a slight annoyance, and that's pretty natural. A lot of the guys will travel with each other for a certain period of time, then they'll jump cars and they'll go travel with somebody else, and then they'll jump cars and they'll go travel with somebody else, and and then they'll eventually make their way back to the original guy, and that's pretty normal.
With him, obviously, you guys tag team champions as well. Was it great for you? Like he's a former WWE champion. I mean, was it great to be aligned with him on TV and being tag champs and working on the card with him?
Mick and I, for whatever reason, have a chemistry that works on TV. We have an on-air chemistry, and and it's not something we have to manufacture or create, or it just happens. We can just make it. Kind of when those situations occur, it's fun and it's easy to, exploit it and take advantage of it and have a good time. And that's the way it always was with us. For whatever reason, like Martin and Lewis, or other, Abbott and Costello, or other couples or duos on TV. Well, we just had that chemistry where we could play off each other pretty easily, um, while performing. So it made it very, very enjoyable and made it a lot of fun.
Do winning the championships mean as much to like the wrestlers as it does to the fans? Because I know some of the wrestlers, I've heard this expression. They use the title's a prop, but to us, it's like a resume, or it's to the fan. To me, anyway, it's like, okay, that's important because now I could say, oh, he's a former tag team champion. It's like a stamp you're leaving behind in the business. Oh, in the history books, you were European champion. Does the belts mean as much to you, like as a wrestler, as it does to the fans?
Well, in when you're in an actual operational uh, platform like WWE, they do. And the reason they do is because they're giving that belt, that championship, that title, they're giving it to you for a reason. They're hoping that putting that title on you can draw ratings, can draw interest, can draw people at the house shows to want to see you defend it. So yeah, it does have some meaning because it means they trust you. They think that they can do business with you.
I just always think back to the Attitude Era, of course, Head, and you're doing that great gimmick. But I always think about the Big Boss Man feud and that whole thing with Pepper and everything else. Is that one of those things you look back, you just laugh like, man, that was some crazy times with, obviously Russo's writing it too, but it's like a crazy angle to think of. Like on paper, you're like, oh, it might not work, but as a fan, you're watching like, this is hilarious. This is like great TV. We're like glued to it because it's so interesting. You wouldn't expect it to happen, but it's like, wow, this guy's obsessed with his dog. Big Boss Man's gonna kill the dog and serve it to him. I mean, it's so weird but interesting and cool at the same time.
And the reason why is because everyone can relate. Everyone either owns a dog or knows somebody who owns a dog, or had a dog when they were a kid. Everyone has had that situation. So it's very relatable and very easy to connect and feel emotions when the big bad guy kidnaps the dog, and it's easy to play right into.
What do you think about Boss Man, or we're working with Boss Man back then?
Oh, he was wonderful. He was awesome. He was such a great guy. Just a terrific guy, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to get to work with him.
What'd you think about just that angle in general? Do you think like, oh, this is crazy, or it's getting crazy? That kennel from hell, like, what did you kind of think about just the angle, just in an overview of it?
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I didn't mind the angle. I didn't mind the final match. It just from the moment that Vince Russo approached me, and then quite literally, and I swear on my kids, every single week that I showed up at TV, the conversation was exactly the same. Because when he came to me and told me the idea, I said, well, you need highly trained animals that operate on verbal commands, and they need to be all from the same training center, because in my mind, I'm envisioning, the trainers standing on all four sides outside the cage, directing these animals on the inside verbally through verbal commands, because that was the only way you could create that Shark Tank kind of a feel, because we had the trainers in there inside the secondary cage. Then there's that loss of, you lose the jeopardy, you lose that fear of that these rabid dogs are going to attack at any minute. And I said that from day one, all the way through. Hey, we're gonna have trained animals. We're gonna have trained animals. Even with Pepper the Chihuahua, I wanted a trained animal, and they ended up going to a veterinarian and getting the list of owners that had Chihuahuas, and that was the extent of it. And arriving in Charlotte that day, there were like 11 dogs with 11 people with that were 11 different owners, and one dog had some obedience training. So there was nothing we could do. It was It was just, but it's my responsibility to take shit and make shoe polish, and obviously we didn't. Ray and I didn't do it. I mean, we tried to make the best of a bad situation, but the entire crux of the match was built around the animals, and the animals weren't. You couldn't feature them or work with them in any manner because of the fact that they weren't trained, and they were urinating, defecating, and fornicating where we couldn't even show them on TV. So, and everyone in entertainment knows you don't work with children or animals. They'll always upstage you.
Yeah, that's for sure. I feel like that's one of those ideas that was great on paper, but the execution, like maybe Russo had a great idea, but the execution of it, not so much.
Yeah, if
Didn't
they'd just gotten trained, they needed very highly trained animals that operated on verbal commands. That's what they needed, and they didn't get that. They went to a veterinarian clinic the morning of the show and got a list of owners that had Rottweilers. That was it. So
could be one of the things that you and Russo talk about on
it could
the
be.
show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So I also wanted to bring up Steve Blackman just because I love that team with Head Cheese. I just thought that was such a funny pairing as well with you guys. It's like so odd to kind of put you guys together, but then it worked because I thought you guys had great chemistry together.
We did. We had great chemistry. And Steve's a wonderful person and a great human being, and and it worked. I mean, we were some of the highest rated segments on SmackDown during that time because of people really tuning in and wanting to watch the two of us together, and we had so much fun doing the vignettes, and it being an oddball pairing that and Steve being such a great straight man, it worked so well, and people really enjoyed it. So I was really happy to be a part of it.
It was cool too for you because it's a little bit of a switch from you and Foley. It's like a different range. It's like, okay, he's definitely the straight man. With you and Foley, you can almost flip it, and Foley could be like the crazy guy. So it's kind of cool for you to like show a little bit of range there.
Hmm. Yeah, and the thing that I want to point out is that everybody's like, they think that I was like a comedy wrestler or something, which I wasn't. I wasn't a comedy wrestler. What I did was entertaining. It was at times it was funny, but I was never done as comedy. It was done because I was supposed to be insane. And so the ridiculousness of some of the stuff that they had me do made total sense for me because I was, you know, completely out of my mind, and I could get away with it.
Oh yeah, just go back and watch anything. WWF, ECW, Smoky Mountain, hell of a worker, one of the best. Like Dr. Tom always says, and everyone always says, like, man, Al Snow best kept secret for a long time until the head character really kind of brought him to the forefront. But always were A+ worker in the ring for sure.
Well, thank you.
So with you, I always felt like, okay, the head thing is very synonymous. Like with you in your career, is that just it's everything people bring up is head, and like the Walmart situation? People always say like, "Oh, I always remember you with head," and then bring up like, "Oh, yeah, your toys got banned from Walmart," and like stuff like that.
Sure, yeah. Or when I had the European title, that gets brought up quite a bit too. Um, and tough enough, tough enough. And the reason why that gets brought up so much and so prevalent is it's very flattering that they remember it. Is simply because that I had the greatest amount of exposure at that time. I was with WWE. It's the biggest platform in the world. And you're going to reach the biggest audience. Outside of that, the only thing that was bigger was MTV. And with Tough Enough, and I reached even bigger audience and worldwide by being a part of that. So, I'm very grateful and very appreciative of my time that I had with both WWE and then, in wrestling and commentating and being a part of Tough Enough and all of that, because that's, it's allowed me to continue to have a career and do the things that I've done for years, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. I still have a marketable name all over the world because of that time that I spent with WWE.
Was Tough Enough always going to be like you a part of it, or did you kind of want to be like, like how did that work out where you got onto Tough Enough? Was that them wanting you to be always be a part of it, or did you say, oh, I would fit this perfectly?
Kevin Dunn approached me, asked me if I would be interested in being a part of it, and then said that Big, that was the executive producer for WWE, would talk to me, and that was John Gaborik, and spoke to John, and and it was never, I don't think, was intended. I think it was more intended to be a vehicle for Taz, but I got there and they liked me, and MTV liked me, and WWE liked what I was doing, and I ended up getting to be a part of it for season 1, 2, and 3. And it was and even 4 when they had it as a segment on SmackDown, and it was one of the greatest things I've done in my career. I really enjoyed it.
Did that kind of launch you into wanting to do the training and kind of eventually be in that role? Is that what kind of launched you into that?
No, I had a training school prior to being having the opportunity with WWE. So I had been doing that sort of thing for quite some time, and was very successful with the training school, and had students from all over the world that attended. And you know, um, I promoted shows very similar in a way to kind of what I do in OVW. I promoted shows. TV was not what it is here, obviously, and platform wise, it was just a local access channel, but it gave the guys experience, and we ran shows in the building that we trained in, and it was a nice little operation, and it kept me going between the bookings and the wrestling, and that I was able to keep making a living.
As we head for the wind down, head towards the finish, any regrets? I love asking that. Like any regrets in the business? Anything you wish would have been done differently or happened differently for you?
No, I don't have any regrets. I wish, the only thing I wish I knew then what I know now. The biggest mistake that I had was I didn't take full advantage of the opportunities that were presented to me. And I was presented an enormous amount of opportunities, but I was too busy trying to be a great wrestler, a great performer, and not a great worker and a great attraction. And if I had, you know, chosen differently, had different goals, and at the time my career would have been, which my career was, I feel like I did very well. I'm very happy and very satisfied with what I did, but financially I would have done immensely more, better. I would have done better, and I would have left a different mark on the business, even though I do feel that I've left a substantial impression on the wrestling business. I think I could have left even a bigger one if I had just focused on the right things and truly capitalized on those opportunities, multiple opportunities that came my way back then.
What's like the best piece of advice you give to like young students or your OVW guys? What's like something that you give to them that they could definitely take and kind of move forward with their career with?
Um, the things that I tell them is to, one, ultimately be honest with yourself. We lie to everybody every day, so just don't lie to yourself. Just be as blatantly honest as you can, and because this life, if you're wanting, you can, quite honestly, you can do absolutely anything you want to do. That's truth. People like to not believe it because they all want to be a victim, and they all want to live in a state of misery because misery loves company. That's the one truest mantra out there. That's the problem with social media, is that there's so many miserable people. They want to go and make sure everybody else is miserable too. Um, the but you can do whatever you want to do. The thing comes down, though, are you willing to do things that others don't do, to live a life that others don't live? And if you're not, that's okay. You know, um, it's not for you. But if it's what you really want to do, you truly have a passion, a true passion to do it, then you'll find a way. If it's not, you'll find an excuse. And, you know, you're going to demonstrate that by not what you say, but what you do. So I'm going to judge you based on how much you've invested time, money, and effort into yourself that warrants you thinking that I want to invest my time, money, and effort into you as either both a promoter or an audience member. You know, um, you've got to be willing to do those things and make those investments and work as hard as possible to achieve your goal, achieve what you want to achieve, or just don't bother doing it. Go find what you really are passionate about doing. Because the real key to success in life and in wrestling, but especially in wrestling, is the passion. It's nothing else. I've seen guys that have had every tool you can imagine. They've had the size, the height, the looks, the charisma, the athletic ability, and they amount to nothing or they quit, you know. And I've seen guys that when you first look at them, you're like, that guy, I don't know how we're going to draw money with that, you know. And sure enough, they do. And the reason they do is because they're passionate about what they do. And that's what's always going to separate the good from the bad. You know, that's going to allow the cream to rise to the top is passion. Because you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not willing to work, you're going to have somebody that has less talent who's going to outwork you is going to be more successful than you, regardless of how much talent you have. So I tell them all the time. I tell my guys all the time. You know, don't lie to yourself. Be honest and invest in yourself, and be willing to do the things that others don't do to live a life that others don't live. And if you're not, then don't fool yourself.
What would you say is like your legacy on the business? I mean, owner, producer, great wrestler, great character. I mean, you had all stuff like, well, if somebody said like, hey, the stamp that Al Snow left behind, or what's the legacy of his career? What would you like? How would you describe that?
It's probably going to be all of my kids, all of the people that I've broke into the business and have trained, and have started careers, and they've gone on and been very successful. And you know, I'm quite prolific when it comes to the number of people that I've broken into the business and trained and influenced and shaped and molded to some degree or another. From Cody Rhodes to Kenny King to Josh Matthews to D'Lo Brown to Dan Severn to Blue Meanie. The list goes on and on. Truth Martini. You know, well, I've got many, many, many kids in the business, and I've been instrumental in helping them in some way or another to some degree, and some that don't want to admit it. So they still are my kids.
So what's next for you? What do you got coming up next?
Just continuing to work and build OVW as much as possible, and I have a comic book out now. They can go to Broken Icon Comics and check it out. BrokenIconComics.com. They can check it out. I'm just having fun, enjoying life, and doing OVW, and occasionally doing the occasional independent appearances and things out and about, and and just being grateful. I'm so grateful that I've gotten to do what I love to do for as long as I've gotten to do it. So in regards to your question about regrets, I don't have any. I've been able to do what I love to do for 39 years. I mean, how can you regret that?
Very true. So where can everybody find you and OVW and all the social media and even Collar and Elbow?
Sure. They can go to collarandelbowbrand.com. They can use the code Snowman and they can get 10% off. And even if we have a sale, they can get an additional 10% off of whatever the sale is using that code. You can follow me at the Real Al Snow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok. I'm kind of getting started on that, and I'm going to start to do a series of videos, of instructional videos about wrestling and psychology and what the terms actually are and what they really mean and things like that. And you can, on Amazon.com, I wrote a book about my career. It's called Self-Help. life lessons from the bizarre career of Al Snow. And again, my comic is out, and it's at brokeniconcomics.com. You can check it out. I'll be out and about making appearances. OVW, if you're interested, go to ovwrestling.com. You can check out the school at aswa.live. For more information, we're on Fight TV every Thursday night live from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we're on about five different national networks, the YTA, RCN, Lily Network. We're on the Action Channel, and we're on Game Plus. So you can find us there. We're on Sky Sports in the UK. We're on Sports International, which is a European sports channel. And with all of that combined, we reach about 700 million homes worldwide internationally. We're also on YouTube at OVW Wrestling TV. Please check us out and, leave some feedback. Reach out to me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I just put up silly jokes all the time because I just try to make people laugh. There's too much negativity out there. So let's figure some nonsense is well in order.
Those are usually pretty damn funny. Those are good. But Al, good stuff. Thank you so much. Appreciate all the time.
Well, thank you very much, John. I appreciate it. You giving me the time, and look forward to doing it again sometime in the future.